Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's legacy when it comes to the energy sector and the hundreds of thousands of Canadians who work in it has already been established. Not only has he driven out tens of billions of dollars of investment, but he's killed several important energy pipeline projects. Énergie Est would have brought Western Canadian energy to Eastern markets, displacing foreign oil and creating jobs in New Brunswick. But this Prime Minister killed that project by imposing a double standard on Canadian energy that foreign oil is exempt from. Why is the Prime Minister opposed to Énergie Est?
The right honourable Prime Minister.
We have been consistent in demonstrating that we understand that growing the economy and protecting the environment must go together. As we move forward on a national plan to protect, to reduce climate change, as we also at the same time defend Canadian jobs right across the country, particularly in Alberta, we're happy to move forward on demonstrating that we understand what the Conservatives and the NDP simply do not. There's no choice to be made between the environment and the economy when it comes to creating good jobs for Canadians and into the future.
The Leader of the Opposition.
This Prime Minister has made the choice to kill thousands of jobs in Canada and give preferential treatment to foreign oil over domestic Canadian production. Énergie Est wasn't the only pipeline that he killed, Mr. Speaker. He killed the Northern Gateway project, which would have taken Canadian products to deepwater ports accessing Asian markets. He ignored the dozens of First Nations communities who supported it all along the way. Will the Prime Minister just admit that killing these projects is just part of his plan to phase out the energy sector?
The right honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, across the country, people are talking about the pipeline investment we made yesterday, but the Conservative Party is actually talking about old news because they can't talk about the news that we had that actually moves forward on protecting jobs for Albertans, standing up for Albertan workers and indeed workers from across the country who get benefits when we get our resources to markets other than the U.S. They tried and failed for 10 years, Mr. Speaker, to get our resources to markets other than the U.S., and they failed. We got it done. No wonder they can't talk about it.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Under our Conservative government, taxpayers never had to pay for pipelines. Major pipelines were approved and constructed without a cent of taxpayers' dollars, and when we approved the Northern Gateway pipeline, which would have brought in Canadian energy to deepwater ports accessing Asian markets, this Prime Minister killed it. He has created the scenario where taxpayers have to pay for his mistakes. Why has he waited so long and created this problem?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what we see here is the Conservatives trapped by their rigid ideology and therefore unable to protect jobs and create jobs for Albertans. For 10 years, they tried and failed to get a new pipeline built to markets other than the United States, and they were unable to do that. What they seem not to understand is that public investment has always been part of developing the resource sector, and we are proud to make sure that we are supporting the growth in the economy, the good jobs for Albertans and all Canadians, while we protect the environment.
Hear, hear. The Leader of the Opposition.
To date, the only thing standing in the way of getting Canadian energy to foreign markets is this Liberal government. And now the Prime Minister is trying to characterize the belief that when a private sector company wants to use shareholders' money to build a pipeline, that is somehow rigid ideology. Well, Mr. Speaker, when a Texas-based company wants to bring $4.5 billion of investment into Canada, Conservatives will support that investment and not ask taxpayers to pay for his mistakes.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the rigid ideology that this Conservative Party is showing is costing jobs for Albertans. They failed for 10 years. Perhaps a little history lesson is in order. Progressive Conservative leaders like Peter Lougheed understood that public investment in our resource sector was important to get our resources built and to markets. For 10 years, they tried and failed to get our resources to markets other than the U.S. We are standing up for Alberta and Canadian jobs, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, tens of billions of dollars of investment in the energy sector has already left this country. And now the Prime Minister is telling Canadian taxpayers that they are going to have to pay for his mistakes. He is writing a check for $4.5 billion for an existing pipeline. Not a single centimetre of new pipeline will be built with this bill to the taxpayer. It is going to a Texas-based company who is taking that money out of Canada. Why is it that when Liberals are in power, taxpayers have to pay $4.5 billion for something they could have got for free?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the Conservatives tried for 10 years to get our resources to markets other than the United States, and they failed. And now that we're actually securing access to new markets, securing Canadian jobs, securing Albertan jobs, their ideology is getting in the way. So I remind them, Mr. Speaker, that the great Peter Lougheed knew that public investment in resource development is essential to move forward as a country. And that's exactly what we're doing for Alberta and for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.